Hi, my name's Emma, and I'm a huge book nerd.
You're my library, always open for business, but you never show it. You're just sitting with it, but I know the score, and you're killing it.
So this video is very late, but better late than never, am I right? So I'm gonna show you all of the books that I read in March. And it's already, what, like April 14th? If you see these books missing on my bookshelf here, that would be because they are currently on the set of a play that I wrote that is being performed right now, which is really, really cool, but I've been super busy with that, so I have not had time to film. But now I'm filming. So technically the first book that I read in March is The Maze Runner, and I read this via audiobook. I'd never read The Maze Runner before. I really enjoyed it, and I would actually like to continue on in the series. I think it's really fun, and the audiobook was really good. I actually gave it 5 stars. I was very excited about it at the time. I don't know if I stick with that. Maybe 4 stars. If you don't know what The Maze Runner is about, it's dystopian, about like this boy who wakes up and he's like in this maze. There are like all these other boys living in this maze, and every day they like run through the maze trying to find a way out of the maze, but they don't know if there is a way out. It's really interesting. I don't know what else to tell you about it. The next book that I read in March was an arc of the poetry collection How to Love the Empty Air by Kristen O'Keefe Updowitz. This was very emotional. It's basically a poetry collection about her experience in losing her mom. So it was like really sad, and I was just like, I'm really glad that my mom is still alive. And I don't want her to die ever at all. It was just, yeah, it was emotional. And it was good, but I don't know if it was totally my style. I gave it 4 stars overall. Next, I listened to another audiobook, and that is The Dry by Jane Harper. I ended up giving The Dry 4 stars. I really liked it. I was like really pleasantly surprised. I just needed a good like thriller at the moment, and it was exactly what I needed. It's interesting because it's like it follows an investigator, but it's not like your typical investigator novel. Like, it was much more about the people than I think those sort of investigator-centered novels usually tend to be. It was very people-centered, and I felt like we were learning so much about the characters, and I really liked the characters, so I really appreciated that, and I definitely want to continue on in the series. I've heard that the second book is not as good, but like, I don't know. I'm very intrigued by it, and I think the cover is kind of gorgeous, so there's always that. Next, I started and DNF'd Adultolescence by Gabby Hanna. As much as I love YouTubers writing books, I did not like this poetry collection, which is why I DNF'd it. It felt like it was trying to be Shel Silverstein, and it was not Shel Silverstein. And I don't know, there was nothing, I didn't think that they were great poems. Yeah. Sorry. Next, I found this book at Goodwill and was just really in the mood to read it, so I read it immediately, and that is The Universe vs. Alex Woods by Gavin Extance. And I really enjoyed this book. I ended up giving this book 4 stars. So basically it is about a boy who got hit by a meteor when he was young, and now he has like some brain damage of some sort, and now he has epilepsy, and he has seizures frequently, and like now he has them under control. But like, it's so interesting because he befriends this old man, and this old man, I like can't give any more away, but like this book makes you think in a really interesting way. I would say it explores similar themes to Me Before You, but in a much better way. I think Me Before You is extremely ethically questionable and did not move me at all. But this book makes you think about similar subject matter from a very different angle, which I really appreciate, and I really felt for these characters, which didn't happen in Me Before You, and it's not a romance at all. It's like, it's more along the lines of A Man Called Uwe. I sort of like see some similarities there because old man, but I really enjoyed this, and if that sounds interesting to you, then I would super recommend checking this out. Next, I read Whiskey, Words, and a Shovel by R.H. Sin, and this poetry collection was just okay. I felt like it was really repetitive. There were a couple good poems here and there, but I felt like once I read a poem on one subject, I then read 20 more poems on the exact same thing, and I was like, just write one really good one and like 2 mediocre ones and then move on. Like, just don't reword the same poem for 20 pages. Next, I listened to an audiobook of Holes by Louis Satcher. And Holes is that book about the boy who he has like really bad luck because of something that his grandfather did years and years and years ago, and he has a curse on him. And he ends up in jail for stealing shoes that he didn't actually steal, and he gets sent to this camp where they dig holes out in the middle of a dried up lake all day. It's a really good book. I've read it before. I really enjoyed the audiobook. I kind of love the story and like the quirkiness of it. It's very like Secondhand Lions, if you've seen that movie. Love that movie. Maybe my favorite movie ever. Someone please say they've seen it so we can geek out. Okay, I gave Holes 4 stars. Next, I listened to an audiobook of Holding Up the Universe by Jennifer Niven, and this book is about a boy who has prosopagnosia. I think that's right. He can't recognize faces. And then there's a girl who is really overweight, and she's like lost a lot of weight, but she used to be like the heaviest teen in America, I think. And it's about how like they go to the same high school, and it's basically about how they interact and like what happens when they meet and so on and so forth. I really liked it. I was a big fan. I ended up giving it 4 stars. Then I read The Complete Persepolis by Marjane Satrapi, and oh my goodness, this graphic novel. I haven't read many graphic novels, but this is my favorite graphic novel that I have ever read. It's so good. It's basically her memoir about growing up in Iran as a woman, and like, oh, it's incredible. It's just so good, and it made me laugh. It made me cry. I was like, it does a really good job of telling a story, and then she has like a spread that sort of wraps up like the endings of all of these little threads that she's been telling for the last chapter, and like that single spread will just crush you, tear your soul out. It's so good. I also think it's really important because I don't think this is a story that we see told often, and I think it's really cool that it takes a graphic novel form. So if that sounds interesting to you, even if you're not a big graphic novel person, I would highly recommend picking this up because I'm not a big graphic novel person, and this changed my mind a little bit. I totally gave it 5 stars, by the way. Next, I listened to an audiobook of Red Dragon, the first in the Hannibal Lecter series by Thomas Harris, and I thought this was okay. I wasn't like super jazzed about it, but I really want to read Silence of the Lambs, which is why I read this one. I gave it 3 stars overall. I just wasn't super invested, and it felt like a Criminal Minds episode, which I love Criminal Minds, but like, I would have rather watched Criminal Minds. Next, I read the play Death of a Salesman for class, and I gave it 4 stars, and I don't really want to talk a whole lot about it. I thought it was a really interesting play. I'd never read it before. I know a lot of people hate it. I actually super enjoyed it. I think that reading it over and over and over again is probably unnecessary because a lot of theater majors study it all the time, but this is actually the first time that I'd ever read it, so I liked it. Next, I read another arc, The Oracle Year by Charles Soule, and you guys, I totally called it that this book is the next Dark Matter, and then everybody else said it after me. Because you can go watch my first review, my first Instagram post. I was like, this is like Dark Matter, except with like telling the future. And then Book of the Month was like, we're gonna make this a Book of the Month pick because it's like the next Dark Matter. And I was like, psh, that's what I said. So basically, now you can trust me for all of your bookish information because I obviously know what's going on. That's a lie, I have no idea what's going on, but I got lucky. This book is basically about a guy who wakes up one day and has all of these predictions about the future, and they start coming true, and he posts some of them on a website, and then everybody goes nuts. It's super good, and if you're a fan of Dark Matter, you should for sure pick this up. Like really, do it. People are not lying to you. Next, I read A Taste of Honey by Shelley Delaney. And this is a play that was written in the 1950s about a young woman living with her mother, who's a sex worker, and then she starts dating, the daughter starts dating a black man, and then cut to Act 2, and then she's living with a assumed closeted gay man. And this was written in the 1950s, and I'm like, look at all this diversity in characters. Where did this come from? It's great. I mean, the main character is white, but she's a woman, so like that's really cool. Written by a woman. I just think that's awesome that it was written in the 1950s. Very excited about that. I ended up giving it 4 stars overall. It's not like a perfect play, but I think it's really cool historically for the time period, so yeah. Next, I listened to an audiobook of A Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue by Mackenzie Lee, and I did really enjoy this. I feel like it got a lot of hype, and like I was okay with the hype, but I don't know, it didn't blow my mind. I loved the diversity. I loved the sister, that like powerful female. She's like, I'm gonna be a doctor, and I'm like, yeah, you are. So I really liked her. I really liked the romance. I thought it was really cute, but it was very YA to me, and like, I mean, it's great for YA, but it just wasn't quite my jam. I did give it 4 stars though, because I think it is a really good book. Next, I listened to an audiobook of Carrie by Stephen King, and a lot of people say that it's a terrible Stephen King book. I liked it. It's his first one. I thought it was really good. It sort of felt like YA Stephen King, if that makes sense. Like, it takes place in a high school, you know, and there's this girl who's telekinetic. She's very bullied, and she has a really hard home life, and so then her like telekinesis starts to like get out of control, and she starts like using it to do bad things, and like it gets scary but not like terrifying, which is maybe why people don't like it as much, because it's not like super scary. I don't know, I really enjoyed it. I thought he did a surprisingly good job with a teenage female main character, because that's sort of hard to write if you're a man, but I thought it worked. I mean, I didn't feel attacked or misrepresented, so that was cool. Next, I read this short comic graphic novel thing that I got as an ARC in the mail, and it is A Night in Kansas City, written by Daniel Gargalo, Sam Kramer, illustrated by Lana Vecchio, and lettered by Deshelle Sathorf, and designed by Victoria Green. That's a lot of people. Honestly, this wasn't my jam. I thought I would be really intrigued by it because of like this girl main character discovers that her friend has like run off or been kidnapped by a cult, and she goes to rescue her from the cult. I just thought the dialogue was really bad. I liked the illustrations, but the dialogue was like cringy, and as a playwright, I was like, no, I can't do it. So yeah, sorry. And the final book that I read in March was Veronica Decides to Die by Paulo Coelho. This was in my spring capsule books box, and I enjoyed this. I think I liked it as an idea, and I liked it intellectually, and I just wasn't blown away by it. I ended up giving it 3 stars because after I finished it, I was just kind of like, But I do think it explores mental illness in a really cool way, and there were some quotes in here where I was like, yes! Like, what does it mean to be crazy? Like, is crazy just different from the majority? Like, is that what that means? Thinking differently from the majority of people? Like, I don't know. I thought it was super cool. If that's something that interests you, then I would super pick this up. And it's pretty short, so I definitely don't think it's like a waste of time. It's just not one of my new favorite books, but I did really enjoy it. Those are all of the books that I read in March. It was a great reading month, and then April turned into not a great one. We're halfway through. What have I read? I don't know. I'd have to look. I'm just very overwhelmed. But yeah, so as to not drag this video on any longer, if you've read any of these books, let me know what you thought of them down below in the comments, and thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye! Mwah.